Hey friends, welcome to the channel, and another year has passed. If you want to know what I did in 2024 in terms of language learning and what my plans are for 2025, keep watching. Los geht's! My name is Dustin. I'm an IT project manager from Germany. On this channel we create content that helps us to be more productive, to learn new things, especially languages, and to live a happier and more fulfilling life. Today we're going to review my language learning progress in 2024. For that we'll have a look at the numbers, so how much time I've spent learning, what I did from a high-level perspective, otherwise the video would be an hour long, and what level my languages have achieved by now. Last but not least, I'll give a high-level outlook for 2025. Alright, let's dive into today's First, let's have a nice sip of coffee, of course. Los geht's! I again spend a lot of my free time learning languages, and also every free minute in between. But I also worked more than last year as a project manager, and also did some trainings for my job, which has led to less free time for other stuff, including also YouTube. The majority of my learning has been passively listening to content. There has been also lots of active studying, more on that later. Also remember that we are only looking at the hours spent in 2024, not all the time I've spent the years earlier. So as you can see throughout the year, there has been again quite some fluctuation of time spent. Whenever I've been on vacation or traveling, you see a dip, which has been around April and May, as well as in June and December. I again worked in all languages every day, except English, which I just use and which is always there, meaning I speak it almost every day in my job and also consume content in English, but don't track it. You can also see that I've tracked something called language, which is basically learning about learning languages. Just like you, I'm watching YouTube videos about that and reading articles and books and so on to always improve, and also use that knowledge to provide more value to you within my videos. It's important to always try out new stuff and see what works for you and what not. Now, let's walk through the languages in a chronological order in which I've actually started to learn languages in the last years. English we have talked about already, but now let's come to my second language that I've learned and I'm still improving, which is French. I've spent about 180 hours with that language, mainly consuming content, like listening and watching stuff. Recently, I've discovered this series Parlement, or Le Parlement, which is, as the name already suggests, about the European Parliament. It's very interesting and super funny, kind of like a political comedy. But I've also had a few speaking sessions on italki. I would say that I've kept my level, maybe improved my comprehension a bit, but to actually improve my speaking abilities, I will need to spend a significant amount of time on speaking sessions and maybe also doing some writing exercises. That would mean, according to the CEFR, the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, my level should be at around a C1 when it comes to understanding the language, since I can basically just read and listen to most of the things without any translation. And just guessing this stuff, I don't know. Still, I'm not perfect and my speaking skills are probably at a rusty B2 level, because I'm not speaking that much. I haven't tested myself, this is again just an estimate. If you want to know more in detail, then watch this video here, which is already a little bit old, but overall still gives a good impression about my current state of French. But I will also make another video at some point to shed some light on what else I did in detail. The next language is, with 250 hours in 2024, Italian, and thus it's also the second most spent time with language. How do you say that? The second language I've spent the most time with? Let me know in the comments if you're a native English speaker. I would really like to know how to say that properly. I like all my languages, but with Italian I have a special relationship because I try to also go once a year to Italy on vacation, and I really like the culture and people. This is why I also really want to achieve a high level of fluency with it. Like last year, I've read, listened and watched a lot of content, especially podcasts and YouTube videos. Further, I've also worked at the beginning of the year on the language with Speakly to learn new phrases and words in context. I've also did quite a few italki speaking sessions, but far less than the year before, and my language level is comparable to French. Maybe it has even overcome French in some ways, because Italian is easier to understand and also to speak, at least for me. On the other hand, right now I got quite some confusion with Spanish, which is why I've put Italian a little bit on the back burner. at least when it comes to language production. I can imagine putting more efforts into it again, but first I want to bring Spanish to a solid level. More on that later. If you are interested about my Italian learning progress in general, have also a look at this video here. Over 210 hours I've spent with Dutch. I've picked up the language initially because I live close to the Dutch border and I always like the sound of the language and the people from the Netherlands. It's just a really nice pastime and also really easy to learn. There's also a lot of content, what makes it really easy to watch and listen to lots of content in Dutch. I do that mainly with YouTube videos and podcasts. Still, I haven't talked too much because the teachers are more expensive than in Spanish, for example. But I've built an okay-ish foundation. My comprehension should also be here at a C1 level. I can just read and listen to whatever I like, also without translations. In terms of speaking, I'm probably at a B1 level. I would guess, since German and Dutch have many similarities and the few sessions I had worked out quite well. I also had the opportunity to speak some Dutch with friends, and while being on vacation in the Netherlands, I also never encountered any problems in communicating with natives. If you want to know more in detail what I did, have a look at my last status video somewhere here. The language that isn't anymore at the beginner stage, but which I'm currently focusing on the most, is Spanish. That reflects also in the time I've spent with the language, which is over 300 hours in 2024. Also, this language is lots of fun to learn because of the two other Romance languages I've studied before and also the stuff that can be transferred from English to Spanish. That means I didn't have to study for too long the beginner's content, but could relatively quickly move on to native speaker content. That is actually interesting to me. Of course, there's also always a downside, which is here mainly the interference when trying to speak or write in Spanish from Italian and French. Often I use, for example, Italian words and then just realize it after having said them, which isn't too bad because I still get understood mostly. But I have to correct myself and work on that. Because if I speak Spanish, it should also be solid and not a variation of Italiano. Also here, I've listened, watched and read lots of stuff. Videos on YouTube like LingQ or also movies on Netflix in Spanish with Spanish subtitles. I've also read multiple books, starting from children books, then novels that I've already read before in another language, up to novels that were completely new to me. I've always used LingQ to make all the content more comprehensible, but by now I should also be able to just grab a book from the shelf and read it without translation. What I've also did was to work my way through the language transfer audio course, which is the best free language learning resource in my opinion. For more information, I've also looked at this video somewhere here. My comprehension is evolving and I should hit a C1 level soon in 2025. But of course there are differences depending on the accents that people are speaking, because the Spanish speaking world is huge, which makes it also very appealing. I've also started speaking on italki and it's okay-ish, maybe at a B1 level at maximum. Having friends that are native speaker of Spanish really motivates me to invest more time and get even better. More info on my Spanish learning progress can be also found somewhere here. And then last but not least, my newest language, Turkish. This language I've just started to dabble in end of 2023, but then really started around July 2024. I started with learning some vocabulary and pronunciation using an app called Drops First, and then also started doing other activities in parallel. That means I did the Turkish Uncovered course by Ollie Richards, did all the lessons in the LingQ app, and I just finished the language transfer course of Turkish. What I also did all the time has been reading and listening to comprehensible and compelling input with my favorite language learning app called, you know it, LingQ. All that amounts to, in total, about 160 hours in 2024 of learning Turkish. With that, I'm still very much at the total beginner stage and have a long way ahead of me. Sometimes I already got a little bit frustrated, but then looking at the numbers and the progress I've made already motivated me to keep going. This is also why I urge everyone to track their progress somehow, since language learning is a marathon, not a sprint. And if you want to know more in detail what I did recently throughout my Turkish learning journey, have also look at this video here. As usual, I will just proceed working on the languages that we have just reviewed and also the goals I have set myself. That we have a new year doesn't change much. I just use the time to reflect a bit on what has worked and what not, and also to recalibrate my focus. When you are just doing your day-to-day learning, sometimes you start putting more effort into languages that are pleasant to learn and where you already have quite some expertise instead of working on the weaker ones or also on specific weak spots in certain languages. There's a natural tendency of always choosing the way of the least resistance. For now, I won't pick up any new language because with all the stuff I've kicked off, I'm already fully utilized. If we end up traveling to a country this year where a language gets spoken that I haven't learned so far, then I might learn a few words and phrases to get by, but that'll be all. My focus remains for now on Spanish, that I want to get to a solid intermediate level in terms of speaking capabilities, but also further improve my comprehension. For the comprehension part, I'll just keep reading and listening to books. For my speaking skills, I'll do a sprint at some point. That means a certain number of italki speaking sessions, 1 hour each, in a row. That should do the trick to overcome the plateau and get to the next level. The other language I'm focusing on is of course Turkish, where I'm still at the beginner stage. I get quite some stuff to work on, and will also do a course in presence to get to know some people who are also learning Turkish. This will just be something I do on the side, but then of course also consuming comprehensible and compelling input, as well as trying out some more new stuff to see what works for me and what not. Each language I'm learning a little bit differently to broaden my knowledge about the learning process itself. The remaining languages I'll just maintain, mainly by listening and watching content. Probably I'll also do here and there a speaking session, but I'm not sure about that yet. If I go to Italy again, I might do a refresher just before to get into the speaking mode again. And then I also might read a book. Last year, I've also planned to play some more video games in foreign languages, but to be honest, I haven't really succeeded in doing that. I've played around a few hours, but then I always find other stuff that I need to work on. So maybe I need to make it a priority. Because once I get into it, I also enjoy it. And if I play a game in a foreign language, it's also some language practice. But I'm not sure how to tackle that. Does someone of you have the same issue? I've just started playing the first part of The Witcher in Spanish. One thing I've also didn't succeed in last year has been to work on my focus and attention span. I spent less time on language learning, but then I still learned each language every day and jumped between topics. As mentioned, I think language sprints can provide lots of value. Trying to keep up with everything that gets published as podcast episodes or YouTube videos is kind of stressing me out. But then I also find it hard to let go. To consume slower media and have longer strips of thought in order to dig deeper into topics is the way to go. Especially nowadays where the thoughts and debates get more and more shallow. What has worked and what I will proceed doing is to meditate again. I've done it on and off, but now I'm committed to doing it more often again. Not sure if I'll be able to do it daily, but I try my best. What has worked for me in the past is to define a fixed time slot in the day. I just don't know when it would fit in. If you define goals for yourself, always keep in mind they are smart. And also have the right routines and habits in place to work towards them. Interestingly, my resume is the same as of last year. I've worked a lot on my languages in 2024 and I will also proceed to do so in 2025, but also give my mind time to reflect and to do nothing. In addition, I use short sprints to work on specific activities and to force myself out of my comfort zone. I work on increasing my focus and attention span again by proceeding to meditate more often, as well as having fewer context switches and digging deeper for a more prolonged amount of time into specific topics. Please let me know in the comments what your plan is for 2025. What language or languages are you tackling? And also what in terms of your learning style you want to improve. If you want to know how to learn a language this year, have also a look at my video of last year here, where I explain exactly what to do. The advice is still up to date. Also, if you found the video useful, please leave me a like and a subscription to the channel, and to not miss anything going forward, click also on the notification bell. Thank you so much for watching and see you the next time.